Hello and welcome back to the ROKER RAPPORT Extra podcast in association with Vaux Brewery. On the pitch, things have definitely improved of late, and we head into Saturday's game with top of the table Wycombe with 2 wins and 3 and unbeaten in 5. Off the pitch, well, it really does depend which side of the fence that you live on. It doesn't seem like anyone's actually stuck on it though. Everyone's got a side at the moment. Back to the actual football though, we've got Phil, who's with us today, who is the match commentator for the 3 countries, BBC, and also runs Ringing the Blues podcast, all about Wycombe. So we'll be discussing Wycombe with yourself, Phil, but first and foremost, how are you doing? Are you well?
I'm very well indeed, yeah. I'm looking forward to the long trip to Sunderland on Saturday.
Oh, it's a trip. Yeah, I've done it the other way around and I know it's a journey, mate. So I don't envy you, I'll be honest with you. But it's better than Gillingham, right?
Always better than going to
Gillingham. First and foremost, I think I and probably many others had Wycombe not to finish near the bottom of the league, but I think we had yet to finish, mid-table this season. Yet we're in 2020, we're in January, and there's actually a bit of a gap at the top of the table. So just how have Wycombe managed to become this season's surprise package?
Well, it's a question we get asked regularly down in South Bucks, and it's down to Ainsworth, really. He's done a phenomenal job. He's the longest-serving manager in the top 4 divisions, and a great advert for sticking with a manager, I think. And it's been brilliant to watch him evolve as a manager and as a leader. And I think this season is the fruition of all of that, really. Everyone in the squad really just buys into his ethos, and the unity and the team spirit of the team at Wycombe is like nothing I've ever really seen anywhere else, really. They are a band of brothers, and they run through brick walls, to use the cliche for Ainsworth, but they do it for each other as well. And he's got this really great system at Wycombe where he's got his generals, his 4 senior players that run the dressing room, and then it allows him to concentrate on all the other issues. And yeah, he plays to the strengths of what he's got. He hasn't got many cards that he can lay on the table, but what he has got, he really makes sure he gets everything out of it, really. And that's why they're up there, I suppose. I can't really pinpoint too many sort of exact reasons apart from the unity and the spirit. And also, I think the element of surprise has really helped as well, because you touched on it on your intro. No one expected Wycombe to be up there, and that's me included, along with pretty much all of the other Wycombe fans as well. We're all a little bit surprised and currently absolutely loving it, I have to say.
It's funny you mentioned that he's the longest serving manager in, I think, League One and probably in a few seasons above. And when you compare how long Gareth Ainsworth has been at Wycombe, 107 Sunderland managers have passed through the door, approximately, since Gareth Ainsworth first took over. But I've got to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of our current manager at all, and I'd be more than happy to see the back of him. And I was probably similar to the last one as well. Whether that's because I'm a Sunderland fan and I sometimes get used to that, I don't really know. But I mean, in terms of sticking to a manager, at what point, say for example, Sunderland stick with Phil Parkinson and the people that say stick with him end up being right. At what point did you start seeing like the fruits of sticking with a manager such as Gareth Ainsworth? When did that start really coming to the fore and you thought, you know what, I'm really pleased we stuck with him the whole way through this?
I think with Gareth, it was when he'd had enough time and enough windows to get his sort of people in the building to work with, and he could really sort of build the team in his image. Like being a reporter, when Wycombe were really bad and when they nearly fell out of the league and nearly went out of business, Ainsworth had a terrible record. He had a terrible run in the second half of the season, and Wycombe didn't have any money. Even if they wanted to fire him, they couldn't do it. They couldn't afford to pay him up. So they had to stick by him. They had no choice. But equally, at the time as a reporter, you felt conflicted because I was aware of everything that he was having to deal with. What little money he had. It wasn't just players. They couldn't afford to pay the yoga instructor, and then 3 weeks later, he's lost 3 key players to muscle injuries. And it's things like that. You think, wow, this guy is really, really up against it. On top of having to learn to be a manager, and all of those things. And he came through that, and then he started to build the team in his own image and start to get the people he wanted. He got rid of the bad apples, and that took a few windows for him because, like I say, they couldn't just pay people up and ship them on. And that takes time, and I think that takes time whatever club you're at. If you've got an embarrassment of riches like Sunderland, or if you're Little Wycombe, you can't really afford to buy their own nets for the training grounds. Gareth has been doing that as well in the past. It's that sort of thing. And you think, well, actually, how many other managers over the years have slipped through the net here where fans have sort of put pressure on the board and not allowed a manager the time and flexibility to get his own people in? I mean, obviously, sometimes it's just not working and the personalities don't work out. But I think always with Gaz that you knew that he was a good person, a solid person that you'd want to go for a beer with, which I think is a really good indicator of a lot of managers. And then after that, you sort of think, well, okay, he's developing here. And he wasn't coming out and fobbing fans off and making excuses. He took a lot of personal responsibility. And I think fans really, really respected that. But the playoff season, when we got to the playoff final, the season after, we nearly got relegated from the league. About 2 months into that season, I was then like, he's onto something here. He's cracked it. He's got a system. He's got his people in, and we're starting to see a real identity for this football club. And it's got long hair, and we love it. And that's where it really kind of came to the fore. And I dread to think where Wycombe would be had they fired him the season before.
When it comes to identity and stuff like that, and I think there'll be loads of Sunderland fans who, when you said that he stamped the identity, a lot of people will be saying, yep, bunch of dirty buggers, that long ball football team. And I've noticed, because obviously I've kept an eye on League One because we've been in it for a while. A lot of people do, and mainly from our own experiences as well, especially that season, a lot of people have looked at Wycombe as they have a certain style. I don't know how I would put it down from my experience, and a lot of people seem to take credit away. Not just Sunderland fans. I've seen loads of League One clubs have come out and said, "Oh, Wycombe are this, that, and the other." But people do often criticise that style of play. But what would you say to those people that do criticise the style of play, apart from the fact of, well, we're top of the league and you're not?
Well, yeah, it's. I think it's not just Sunderland. Sunderland obviously came to the fore when Gaz got linked to the job up there. It's all clubs basically, and I say all clubs. It's all clubs that we beat, especially the bigger clubs that we beat. That seems to be a real problem for them. I've seen Wycombe lose to loads of teams, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, I love that Wycombe. It's a beautiful ground, isn't it? A great club and everything else." When they've just won 3-0 or whatever, everyone can do that. When you start beating teams, they will find ways to criticise and do whatever. And Wycombe, it's an obvious target because it's the long ball this, or I can't watch that every week. Well, you don't have to watch it every week. And also, there is a massive snobbery in football about the style of play. I've checked the laws of the game. You get 3 points for a 1-0 win that's come off Akinfenwa's head in the 94th minute from a long ball. As the same if you take someone apart 5-0 and play like 1970s Brazil. I've checked the laws. It's 3 points for a win. That's all it is.
Most definitely is.
I tell you what, I've seen some of the results coming out of Sunderland, for example, and Pompey in the early stages of the season. And I saw Pompey try and play some good football against Wycombe and got beat 1-0. And I was looking at those fans afterwards, and I was like, they don't look very happy to me. I think it's a results business, and the Wycombe fans,
absolutely.
They don't worry about long ball football. They just love the results and the goals. It's exciting.
The best way to kind of compare it, I suppose, from a Sunderland perspective is when we were in the Premiership and we played under Sam Allardyce. And I think I'll openly hold my hands up that the Sam Allardyce days were some of the best football, the nicest football we'd ever played, and the most confident I felt going into games because we compete since probably like the Peter Reid days. And yet when we had Sam Allardyce, and then I think it was Everton got him just after that. No, it was Palace got him, and then Everton got him. And Everton, there was outcries that they got Sam Allardyce because it just wasn't the way Everton play. And I really like Everton as a club, but when we had Allardyce and we were like classed as a, should we say, a percentage-based sort of team, or long ball was probably more suited. I loved that time when we played under us. I thought it was fantastic. I think it was the best football we've probably played in the past decade, and probably the most positive I've felt about it. So sometimes I think there is something about it. Like, I openly will admit I was frustrated with both the Wycombe away games this year in terms of the style of play, but to be honest with you, had we won 1-0, yeah, I wouldn't really care. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just about winning games and finding a way to win the games.
And also, when you're a big club in League One, like you as fans play a big part in the matchday experience, even away from home, because there's so many of you.
Yeah.
And it becomes, we can do it away from home really, really well. They'll quieten the home crowd down. And that creates panic and stuff on the pitch, and it affects what goes on the pitch. And Gaz is really aware of it. So frustrating you lot is part of the game plan as well. It kind of it really helps him achieve what he needs to do, because that frustration from the terraces gets down onto the pitch, and then you see what happens. It's all part of the game plan. And do you know what? If you've only got certain things at your disposal, you'll do everything you can with them to get a result. And Wycombe, you can call it a Nissan Micra. We're not going to put a big spoiler on it and massive tyres. It will look ridiculous. We'll just do what we can, what we've got, and make it run as efficiently as possible and get the results. And so far, so good. Like we said earlier on, no one expected Wycombe to be up there doing what they're doing. And the goal this season was to improve on last season, which was staying up on the final day of the season, finishing 17th. I think 52 points was the target coming into the season, and Wycombe were on 44 in the first week of January. So they're doing exceptionally well. But obviously now some of the fans are now looking and thinking, well, maybe we can get into the Championship. And that's great. Football fans can dream. That's what we're all here for, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And you mentioned Wycombe and quieting down the home fans. The one game that I didn't manage to get to, but I did actually watch the full game. I was in Poland last year when you played us. And I think at the time we were doing all right. I think, if memory serves me right, it was the end of November. We weren't doing too badly at home. I think we were unbeaten. I think we only lost one sort of all season. And we were doing well. We were occasionally putting teams away, sort of 3 and 4 by that point. But it was Wycombe were the first side that really came to the stadium and frustrated the home fans and come away with a 1-1 draw. And I don't know whether you have looked, but if you look from the game that we played against you in late November, which Madger got the equaliser in the 85th minute, and I think a lot of things happened when Madger left, but there was a lot of games after that where teams set up very, very similar to the way Wycombe did, and there was a lot of 1-1 draws at the stadium, like in the second half of the season compared to the first half of the season. And Wycombe were one of the first teams that really came, and we kind of went, we got nullified a bit there, and we didn't quite know how it happened. And it seems that you've continued to do it in every game against us, but that is a bit of a worry going into Saturday for me. Do you think he'll do the same sort of thing?
I think he probably will do, and I think teams you'd think by now would be aware of what's going on and be looking at ways to combat it.
Yeah.
Because that's what would happen. But that away day at Sunderland for Wycombe fans was amazing, because you got to appreciate a lot of Wycombe fans have grown up watching them play, in non-league, sort of even below the conference level, and I count myself in that group as well. So to go to a place like the Stadium of Light was phenomenal for those Wycombe fans and for the team. And I think that day was perfect for Gareth Ainsworth, because heading the hotel next to the stadium, and there's a short walkway, isn't there? You cross, and there's a back door into the Stadium of Light. And Gareth Ainsworth that day insisted that Wycombe would not skulk in through the back door. He walked them round to the front and walked them through the front entrance at Sunderland, saying, "My team have earned the right to play Sunderland in the league. They're coming in through the front door." And they continued that attitude onto the pitch. And I was at that 1-1 draw. And Wycombe, they deserved that point. 100% deserved that point that day.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they did nullify Sunderland, but there was a certain air of like, well, it's just Wycombe at home. This shouldn't really be a problem. And if you look at it off the pitch, the disparity in the money involved in both squads, then a betting man would have backed that as a home win all day long. But Wycombe's game plan was executed to perfection. What does really surprise me is they've been able to do it twice again since then. I think Saturday will be really, really interesting to see if Phil Parkinson has got his head around it.
I don't have much trust in Phil Parkinson, but hopefully he does. Contrasting fortunes in terms of recent results. Actually, Phil Parkinson's getting a bit egg on my face. He's won 2 in the last 3, unbeaten in 5, against relatively decent teams. Lincoln, I thought, were quite impressive, although they're not that high up. But Fleetwood and Doncaster, both relatively well-drilled sides. So I suppose that is a positive. But looking at Wycombe's, obviously you're top of the league. There is a gap there, which we kind of mentioned before, but that gap was quite huge at a point. It's gone down to 4 points from third. So there's been a bit of a blip recently. You got a draw with Ipswich, who are also on a fairly bad run of form. But then before that, there was 3 defeats in a row. Coventry at home, 4-1, Portsmouth away 2-0, and Oxford away 1-0 as well. But you did have 10 men for that as well. A bit of a blip, I think you could say, because it's 3 results are just 3 results, and over the course of the season, if you recover from that, it won't really matter. But is there a reason that there's been a bit of a dip in form, or is it just the way football is?
I think the way the fixtures fall over Christmas, obviously every team has this problem. The games come thick and fast. Wycombe squad is very small.
Yeah.
They don't have a huge array of players to pick and choose and rotate from. That Saturday before Christmas was pretty vital. I think Oxford are probably the best team I've seen in the division.
They are very good, yeah.
I think they're very exciting how they play the ball. But what was really exceptional from them on the day was that they played Wycombe at their own game to a large extent. They knew what was coming. They knew the physical threat. They knew the slowing the game down, and they kind of took Wycombe on at their own game a little bit and did very, very well at it. They got Akinfenwa sent off, which was, fair enough. It happens, and every team will do it. I mean, Oxford did it brilliantly that day, and that was a big turning point in the game. Wycombe were already 1-0 down at that point, but they came out in the second half with 10 men and had a go at them and were unlucky not to nick a point, which would have been phenomenal with 10 men away at Oxford. Pompey again sort of rolled their sleeves up and realised they had to win the fight, the physical battle to earn the right to be able to beat Wycombe. I think that's now, could be Wycombe's undoing this second half of the season now, is that because they've been up there for a prolonged period of time, I think people have now had to finally start to take them a bit more seriously and say, actually, there's more to this team than Akinfenwa. How do we go about beating this side? And looking at it a bit more closely. I think once you're top of the league, you're there to be shot at, and you're a bit of a scalp, which sounds a bit ridiculous when it's Little Wycombe, but that's what they're going to have to put up with in the second half of the season now. They've always played the underdog card, and they've always been, we haven't got anything, we've got no money, we know this is how it is. But you can't really play that card when it's 7 points clear at the top of League One in December. So it's a different situation for them to deal with, and it'll be interesting to see how it happens. I mean, if they can have a bit of luck and keep injuries to a minimum, then they can have a shot because they've got momentum with them, even off the back of these defeats. They've only lost 4 games all season in the league, which is incredible, really. Coventry are the only team I've seen take Wycombe apart, really, this season. And I'm not making excuses for Wycombe here because they were really poor against Coventry. But Coventry, because of the Bury situation, they didn't have a game on Boxing Day, so had maybe a bit of extra rest. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it. They scored very early on in the game, which would suggest that tiredness shouldn't have been an issue with that. But they were excellent on the day, and Wycombe just didn't turn up. And I think they played a very similar formation to what Phil Parkinson has been playing in recent games. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out on Saturday and whether Ainsworth has learnt anything from that Coventry defeat.
And as much as I've criticised that formation, which just occasionally can look like 3 at the back, occasionally can look like 8 at the back, it has actually kind of worked the past few games. But talking of Phil Parkinson, you might have noticed myself, I'm not the hugest fan of Phil Parkinson, and I think a lot of Sunderland fans weren't, and maybe hopefully very much so, he proves me and many others wrong by putting what is a decent run together at the moment into a level of promotion form. But the 2 people that were heavily linked with the job for us, as far as we were aware, were probably 2 people that I don't think people were overly excited about, Parkinson being one of them, but Ainsworth was another one, and you've spoke really, really passionately about exactly what Gareth Ainsworth brings. We played you just before. He could have been on either side, I think we thought at the time. But was there any point that you thought you would actually lose Gareth Ainsworth to Sunderland?
100%. I think had he been offered the job, I think he would have taken it because, he's an ambitious guy, and Sunderland is an absolutely massive club. It's a sleeping giant. I know Gaz enough well enough to be able to say that he would have fancied taking that job on and meeting the challenges of it. So yeah, Wycombe fans, it's a constant threat for Wycombe now because when you're top of the league and you've got teams beneath you or above in the division above not doing well, you think, well, he's in the shop window now. I think a lot of the problems he has are this sort of, this negative attitude towards his style of play and everything else. And I have to say it again, it's just very lazy because, people don't understand the situation he has to work under. I'd be very excited to see Gareth Ainsworth working at a club with big resources and things at his disposal to see what he could do with that. I'd be really interested to see how that would pan out. He's a superb manager, and that doesn't come down to style of football. He just gets the very, very best out of people. So, look at someone at your club, Aidan McGeady. I look at him and think he's an absolutely fabulous footballer. even after I saw him play for Sunderland at Adams Park this season, where he just didn't turn up.
Yeah.
This guy should be destroying teams in League One. And I'm looking at him and thinking the amount of money he's earning, the level he's played at, the ability he's got. He didn't turn up until the 89th minute at Adams Park. And I was like, why isn't the manager not able to harness this talent and get the very best out of it? And that's what Gareth Ainsworth does. And that's why I found it quite baffling, where a lot of Sunderland fans were like, we don't want that bloke managing our club. And I'm like, you'd be lucky to have him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'd get the very best out of his squad. And if you don't want to play for him, he gets rid of you. That's it. You're gone. And I think he's big enough to be able to do it. And he commands a respect to the dressing room. So we love Phil Parkinson at Wycombe because he got the job. So I'm sure he'll get a very warm round of applause from the Wycombe fans.
It's funny you mentioned about McGeady as well, because it's actually gone the opposite way with Parkinson. He's now ousted him out of the side and he's on the transfer list for whatever reason it may be. We don't really know. And literally everyone has massively differing opinions on the McGeady situation. Mine personally is that he's the best player in the league on his day. You work out what's wrong with him and you try and make sure that he's got place at least in the squad somewhere. But hey, I'm not Phil Parkinson. If Ainsworth had gone to Sunderland, and I'm saying this from a perspective of knowing that heroes of mine have gone to other places for specific reasons, whatever it may be, and I've kind of gone against them, but that's probably because I'm biased towards Sunderland and I think the world revolves around Sunderland, which of course it does. But had he gone to Sunderland, would the general consensus around Ainsworth and probably his quite legendary status when he leaves, would that have changed within the fan base if he'd went?
No, not at all. I think the vast majority of the fan base would have sent him on his way with our very best wishes, and I think a lot of fans would have perhaps gone after the Wycombe result on a Saturday, would have looked for Sunderland. It's that strong. It really is. The forerunner to this is Martin O'Neill. When he left Wycombe Wanderers after the fantastic job he did there, I still do it to this day. Wherever Martin O'Neill pops up, I still look at him as one of our own.
Yeah.
We made Martin O'Neill a manager. And the same would apply to Gareth Ainsworth. Wherever he goes after Wycombe, whatever he does, Wycombe fans will always look upon him fondly and say he's one of us. He's come from Wycombe, and that doesn't matter what club he is. Maybe if he goes to Colchester, he might dip down a few of our estimations, but I can't see that happening. But you never know. He's been so dignified in his time at Wycombe, and he's never fobbed off the fan base and said, "Oh yeah, I'm not going anywhere." He's not done a Nathan Jones at Luton where he says it will take something like Barcelona for me to leave, and then a month later he's at Stoke. He's not been like that. He's always, he never denied the fact he was talking to other clubs when it was happening early this season, and fans respect that. He's an ambitious guy, and I think he's one of those rare things in football where he speaks with his heart, and the fans respect it. And I think, if he was to go, we'd still love him. It doesn't matter.
Do you think you need to get promoted to keep hold of him? Or do you think that you've got a chance of losing him even if you do?
If we go up, then there has to be a long queue of clubs, I think, looking at him. Because it'd just be the most phenomenal achievement. And I really, really hope if Wycombe do go up, the story of just how amazing a job he's done really comes to the fore, and what he has to put up with at Wycombe. And if people finally understand that, and they'll think, actually, there's more to this than sticking it up to the big man here. This is someone who runs the club from top to bottom and has really dragged them up. Wycombe is essentially a non-league club, and to get them where he has done, even at this stage, is a phenomenal achievement. To get them up, if I was a chairman in the Championship at a bigger club, then he'd be definitely on my shortlist. And there's certain other clubs, QPR, they're doing really well under Warburton at the moment, which again Wycombe fans are quite relieved about, because QPR fans love Gaz. I think Blackburn Rovers is the club we really worry about, because that's the team that Gareth supports. And if they start to have a bit of a wobble, then they could look at Ainsworth and think that could be the man for us. I think in a way, as a fan of the club, I want him to stay for as long as possible. But as a reporter who's got to know him, there's this part of me that wants him to go and onto a bigger stage and achieve really, really well, because I think personally, I think he deserves it. So it's quite. I'm quite conflicted, to be honest. So, but I think he'll continue to rise. He's that sort of character.
Talking about the team itself, we've mentioned Akinfenwa because it feels like Akinfenwa was the one that gets mentioned every single time. And to be honest with you, he hasn't not impressed me, but he hasn't been the one that's impressed me the most when I've watched Wycombe play against us. It's been sort of other players. Samuel in particular was one player that every time I've seen him, he's been quite good. And I think Freeman also is another player. But you watch them on a weekly basis much more than I do. Aside from Akinfenwa, which are the players that really need singling out for, a great first half of the season and maybe even longer?
Darius Charles, the centre-back, he scored the winner against Sunderland, and I'm not just saying that because of that. He's been our best player this season by a long way, and that's a really difficult thing to say because I said earlier on in this interview that this is the team spirit that's really the star of the show here, that they all pull together as one. But Darius Charles, personally, his story is phenomenal. He got signed off by a surgeon in November 2018 saying, you can't play football anymore, that's it. He's got an arthritic hip. He didn't play another game that season, went into depression, got released by Wycombe, started to look into the next stages of his life, wanted to become a physical trainer, continued to train at Wycombe because that's the sort of club it is. They didn't want to cast him out. They kept him in within the group while he went through his qualifications. And because at the start of pre-season, Wycombe literally had nothing, no money at all. This is before our potential investment came in. He was in the building and they needed bodies for pre-season games, and he played a few of them. By which point he'd become a vegan. He'd completely changed his way of life. His body shape had begun to change. He was lighter, he was stronger, and he had a really good impact in pre-season, and he got offered a short-term deal which expires at the end of January. He can't train. He's like the lower league Ledley King. And when he plays in defence, he's just a calm head and a leader back there that's really been instrumental in Wycombe's defensive record this season. It's phenomenal. And hearing him speak about the game and about life, and I think he has such a huge impact on the players around him, and a lot of the fans as well are sort of buying into his attitude. And he, to me, is the standout performer of the season so far. The biggest problem we have, and this was exacerbated over Christmas, is he can't play sort of Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. That's not physically possible for him now, and he's so integral that as the season wears on, you think, well, if he's not there, if he misses more games than he plays, then I would worry about Wycombe. But yeah, he to me is the guy that really embodies the spirit of Wycombe and the personal story behind it. I mean, I don't care. Football's tribal. I get that, and we all love our clubs and all the other things. But I can't imagine a football fan in this country supporting any team who would read about his story and get to know his story and not fail to be impressed by him. He's just been phenomenal, and I've probably set him up for a massive fall on Saturday now. I hope he does well on Saturday if he plays. But he's been brilliant for us, and the rock really that they built the team around. And Akinfenwa, of course, everyone loves to talk about him. He's like a superstar in the lower league. He's never played above League One, but he's like probably one of the most recognisable footballers, in the world almost.
Yeah. I think it's his size.
Everyone wants to talk about him, and that's great because they get distracted, and it allows the likes of Samuel and Freeman, the other players that you've spoken about, a few little gaps for them to run into.
Yeah, and just do what they do. Talking about Darius Charles, it's funny because he did the interview after the game, and I think he said something about this is our home, and I think our fans didn't react to that too well because I don't think, to be honest with you, and I really hope it doesn't come across, many Sunderland fans do treat any other clubs with disdain. I think we're too big for this league. We think we can be, and we should be able to get out of it. But it was funny, I kind of researched who he was based on the fact that his after-match comments kind of annoyed me, and there was a really good article by I think it was Adam Bate. I could be wrong, or at Ghost Goal, I think, and he did an interview with him about how he was told he had to quit and what you were just saying there, and it did give a bit more of a human side to him. And I mean, obviously, like you said before, football is very tribal. There'll be a lot of fans that probably remember his comments and weren't too pleased with it, but it is actually a really, really good story to see where he's come from. I hope he has a terrible game on Saturday. Don't get me wrong, I'm still tribal in that sense, but it is a really good story, and it's on Sky Sports, I think. I do remember reading it in about November time, but I think it went out just before the game that they played against us. But yeah, no, I mean, I think if you have a centre half that you can, I almost find if your centre half is solid and you know exactly, the way he's going to play and he's consistent, I think it's always the best way to build a team. I've always found that if we have a good centre half pairing or a good centre half, our team tends to progress. And I go back to the Allardyce days and the Reed days. We had two good centre-halves, and you can just rely, if you know that your defence is going to be solid, you kind of feel like the rest of the teams are right, don't you?
Exactly that. If you've got a solid foundation and the rest of your team know all they really need to do is nick a goal, and then you're confident you're then going to get something out of a game. And I think that for fans as well is hugely reassuring. If you're shipping 2-3 goals a game, it's going to be really, really tough. It's an obvious thing to say, but yeah, Charles and Stuart at the back for Wycombe, they've been, solid. Right foot, left foot at the back. It's a simple combination, but it's a winning combination, and it's just a combination that we just didn't think was going to be possible because, when Darius Charles has been given a contract, it's like, well, we must be in real problems here. This guy's been signed off by a medical professional. Yet, this is the sort of player we're bringing in. This is what some fans were thinking in July and August, and he's just proven everybody wrong. And it's just been wonderful to watch. It's just a great human story. This sort of elevates football almost.
Yeah, and it is. Football is sometimes about the teams, but it's sometimes nice to read the individual stories of like winning through in football, isn't it? I think a lot of people really appreciate those kind of stories. Talking about Sunderland, we're probably a bit of a different beast compared to what Wycombe have been. We've been anything but a success story this season. It's been really poor actually, and I think I always feel like we're one result away from absolute crisis, which means by the time this goes out, people will probably think that I'm being a bit negative, but then if we lose on Saturday, people will probably agree with everything I say. It can feel like that with Sunderland, that we're in a constant crisis. But what are your thoughts on Sunderland's season so far? And do you think we're maybe starting to turn a corner after the past few good results, or do you think that's just maybe just a couple of good results on the trot?
Yeah, I've always thought that, once you made the managerial change, you needed a window just to kind of get rid of some of the toxic people in your dressing room, because having watched Sunderland play a couple of times this season, it was clear to me this was a squad that was getting nowhere near where it should be in terms of performance and getting the most out of its sort of more talented players. And there was clearly something like personally wrong inside the dressing room. That was quite obvious thing to be able to see even from the outside. So I've always thought that the second half of the season would be the time that Sunderland would come good. And, if that's under Parkinson or whoever, I would say, yeah, they are one of, even now, they're one of the teams I look at and think, well, they're surely going to have to be up there at the end of the season. And perhaps Parkinson started to string the results together now. And, this could be the start of a very good run. The way the league is, it's really, really open. And you're in with more than a shout, in my opinion. So you've got off-the-field issues going on as well in terms of ownership, which can't help.
Yeah.
But surely, I've been to Stadium of Light just the once, and I look at it and think, well, this is on its day, this is clearly like almost as good as a goal head start here. Obviously, that can go two ways, because when things start to not go well, it can become toxic.
It can.
But I think that Sunderland, to me, I would imagine they're going to get in the playoffs this season at the least. Because no one's really grabbed the league by the scruff of the neck and run with it. It's tight, it's compact, it's an odd league because of what happened to Bury. It's disjointed, and all it needs now is someone just to go, yeah, this is ours, and make a run for it. And why can't that be Sunderland? You've still got great players. We love Luke O'Nien. And a bit like what I said earlier on about Martin O'Neill and Gareth Ainsworth, we still look at Luke as one of our own. And we still love to see him doing well. I hope he doesn't score on Saturday. It's always great to see him. And, I look at him and I think actually he's the sort of character that Sunderland really, really needs to build their team around. Regardless of what he's like as a footballer, he's just a wonderful, infectious human being who you want to be with and you want to see do well. And I think he's really connected with you guys as fans as well.
He really has.
If you get a few more like him, you'll be onto something.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. My next question was I've got here wrote down, which Sunderland players concern you, Phil? In brackets, mention Luke O'Nien. So we'll just go straight into Luke O'Nien instead. And you're absolutely right in what you're saying. He didn't have the best of starts here in the first sort of 3 months, but I know there's some people that think he is an average League One footballer. I'm very much not of that opinion. I'm a vigorous defender of Luke O'Nien, but I would say there's a really good bulk of people that just love Luke O'Nien. And the thing with Luke is, he's never played his position on a consistent basis, or any position on a consistent basis. He's basically been our right back, our right wing back, our right midfielder, our number 10, and he could probably play in goal if he wanted to. But you know what? He never complains, and his attitude. The one thing I could say about Luke O'Nien is that even the people that think he's quite an average footballer absolutely do not criticise his personality, and he's exactly what you want at Sunderland Football Club. But I spoke to a Wycombe fan for the last extra that we did, and he echoed the exact sentiment. It's almost like he's gone from Wycombe, 9,000 fans, to Sunderland, occasionally 45, and he's got the same attitude. He just loves football, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a fantastic character, and just to say what he said about different positions. If you asked him to clean the coach after an away day, he'd have the cleanest coach in the Football League. That's how he is. And he wouldn't complain about what his role is, or saying, look, actually, I want to be playing here. He's just happy to be involved. And, and again, he's super ambitious, and his work rate is just insane. I think that's why the main reason I think he had a slow start at Sunderland was I think he was probably trying too hard.
He ran about everywhere.
I think Ross had to sit him down and have a chat with him and say, look, mate, just chill out a bit. It's going to be okay. And there he is. But he's very happy at Sunderland. When I've spoken to him, I think the first time I saw him after he moved to Sunderland, he kind of ran up to me and went, Phil, they got a swimming pool at a training ground, and I live there. It's fantastic. And I was like, awesome. And that kind of sums him up, really. He just trains and trains and trains and trains. And what he lacks in technical ability, maybe against some of your better players, he makes up within heart. And he's the player I fear the most coming into Saturday, because he's such a competitor. It won't bother him that it's Wycombe. That sentiment will not come into it at all. He'll just want to do what's best for him and his team, and we respect that 100%. And I really hope he has a stinker on Saturday. But he hasn't done anything against Wycombe as yet, which leads me to believe that just out of law of averages, he's probably going to do something.
I don't know whether you saw it, but we beat Doncaster on the 29th of December over the Christmas period, and it was funny. He got fouled, but it wasn't really a bad tackle, and he rolled about 10 times on the floor. And then Chris Maguire started continuing to roll him. And it was funny how it happened, because it was so obvious. It was funny, almost everyone straight away went, I bet he's learned that at Wycombe. So he's still got, as great as a lad he is, he's got a bit of shithousery about him. And we like that here, I'll be honest with you, we like that.
You're very welcome, guys. You're very welcome. It's interesting how you guys can laugh about it when there's a Sunderland player doing it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You won't be laughing on Saturday when someone does it to you, I can guarantee.
Oh, but one thing we can agree on is Luke is, he's in terms of just a character, he's one of my, and I think a lot of people's favourite players over the past few years, because I think for a long time, all that we really wanted, and obviously things change and some people prefer ability over character, but we really want to see someone who just loves Sunderland. And I mean, I've spoken to sort of Kevin Ball and a few people that have been sort of in the club, and sometimes it's a case of Luke O'Nien has to be told to go home, not to kind of, his work ethic's just ridiculous. Apparently he just finishes training and then just for 2-3 hours, and people are leaving and they're just like, Luke, you need to go home. And he's like, all right. My only concern with Luke O'Nien is I think it's the only person I could lose my girlfriend to, so I hope he continues to be with his wonderful girlfriend that he seems to have, and doesn't have his eyes set on going to anyone else, because I think my girlfriend might be quite interested if not, which would be a bit of a loss if I'm honest with you.
Luke is such a nice man. I can't imagine he would ever break your heart, mate, in that respect. But he's the same at Wycombe. He was having to be told to go home at the end of the sessions, and yeah, I know what you mean. Fans pay the money to see Aidy McGeady, do the wonderful things that he can do. That's what puts bums on seats. But you need a combination of characters and abilities and whatever in a football team. And Luke O'Nien is the heavy lifter. He's the water carrier, but he can play a bit as well. He's scored some great goals for Wycombe Wanderers, but it's those sorts of characters you need in a dressing room to kind of get the rest of them going, really. And yeah, I think he's a cornerstone of your team.
Yeah.
I'd
agree.
It'd be nice to see him on Saturday after the game, not before.
So I guess just to finish off, then, I don't know whether you're a man for predictions. I've coined this as my final question with everyone, and Joanna last week didn't want to put a score on it, but then did. But are you a predictions man?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they come back to bite you sometimes, but
every
it's pretty
time
boring if we all said, "Oh no, I can't do that." So yeah, I'll have a prediction. Go on.
Go on then. Go for it. Score and scorers.
It's going to be 1-1. I think Ozturk from the back for you guys, and I'm going to say Paul Smith for Wycombe for he's going to get a goal, I think. So 1-1 as well. I think the long run of unbeaten games against Sunderland will continue.
It's funny, I'm going to take exactly the same. I'm going to say 1-1. I was thinking that beforehand. I'll go with your same decision. I'll say Paul Smith because he scored against us last year for Accrington. But I'm going to have to go for Luke O'Nien for us. I'm going to have to go for Luke O'Nien, unfortunately. Maybe a diving header because he's had a few of them this season. And I do like to see him like leaping like a salmon because it is quite funny. But Phil, thanks very much for coming on. That was superb. I hope you have a safe journey down. I don't hope you enjoy the 90 minutes in between. That's just the way it is. But enjoy your journey down. Enjoy our wonderful city. And good luck for the rest of the season, mate.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Anytime.